I want to tell you a little bit about the technology we're using. It's something called LiveU.
And we've got a special weapon to help us follow the traffic situation. This is the view from what's called LiveU.
It would be the first live-streamed crowd surfing.
We have what basically looks like a backpack from a company called LiveU.
LiveU mobile technology.
Live on a plane, live from inside a car.
Live on Lake Michigan.
They are the pioneers of a technology called cellular bonding.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the LU800 after party. My name is Chris Perry, and as you can see, I came prepared tonight to have a really good time. So thanks for tuning in. If you're looking for the LiveU Sports Show, as it usually is on at this hour, 8 o'clock on Wednesday nights, sadly it's on hiatus this week, but I promise it's for good reason.
Chris, for the sake of our lovely viewers right now, can you please turn off the lights? That'd be great.
Yeah, you're probably right. This looks ridiculous. So, I'm back. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, James. I'll make sure to try and keep this down a notch. I know you've yelled at me a couple of times today. So, first and foremost, I want to note that we are producing this show using the LiveU at-home production solution. James is in his living room down in New Jersey. I am in my house up in Massachusetts, and he's taking all of the feeds in for tonight's show in his living room and switching the show. So yesterday we did very much the same setup for our live broadcast. We'll release a behind-the-scenes video soon, but I need to take a moment and thank Varto Technologies, our reseller in Winchester Community Access and Media, for their valuable time and production facilities to make yesterday's launch a success. Yervant at Varto and David at WinCam, we appreciate all of your support. We would not have been able to do it without you. So just in case you missed it yesterday via virtual press conference, we launched the world's first multi-camera production quality field unit, the LU800. Let's take a look at this exciting new platform. Some really incredible stuff. So to celebrate tonight, let's answer some of your questions from the announcement yesterday. But to begin the celebration, I actually picked up the phone today. I called our hardware team and told them that I wanted to toast to the LU800, asking them if the unit was waterproof. They said, I don't really think that's a good idea, Chris. But all celebrations call for a champagne toast, so we will pour some champagne for my friend the unit over here. I will pour myself a glass of champagne, and I will toast to all of our customers, a very successful LiveU LU800 platform launch. We can't wait to see you guys use this beautiful new piece of equipment. Cheers to you, my friends. So before we dig into the LU800, one of the most requested things that we got in the chat and comments from the announcement yesterday was a quick overview of the LiveU hardware, because we're not really showing it to you. So we've got some great pictures of the LU800 hardware to take you through exactly what this looks like. So first and foremost, It has 4 SDI inputs. These are up to 4K in resolution, and we'll talk more about that in a few minutes. It also has a full-size HDMI output for video return to the field. Now, there's lots of file options in the LU800, and we enable these with a couple of different ports. There's a USB-C port that you can connect up for file upload through the unit. There's also a full-size SD card for file upload or for local video recording. There's a USB 3 port for file upload once again, as well as our Tally Light solution. Now, as we turn the unit around, we'll see the ports on the other side. In the top left here, you've got the 2 audio interfaces for either intercom or video return or IFB. There are 2 Ethernet ports, in addition to the 2 built-in Wi-Fi chipsets. There are 2 powering options. We've got a direct battery input that you can use to power it with an external battery, as well as the 19-volt AC to DC power supply. So there's actually 3 different options, including the internal battery within the unit. Now there's a USB 2 port for LiveU's wired remote control. And then in terms of antenna options, there's the 8 SIM slots that connect up to the internal modems within the unit. There's an A side and a B side to those, so that you've got basically the domestic and roaming SIMs, if you will. And then the antennas, both internal as well as external connectors, so you can connect up to 8 external cellular connectors, as well as the ability to connect up an external GPS to the unit for geolocation. So hopefully this gives everybody a better feeling of what the LU800 actually looks like based on our launch yesterday. Now, we did get questions and comments from all over the globe, from Europe to Africa to Asia, North, South America, Latin America, Oceania, all over the place. And so really excited tonight. Joining me now is our always smiling sports director, Janelle Fleming. Janelle, welcome to the after party.
Hey, Chris. Thank you so much. I'm really, really excited to be here and see this LU800 finally get talked about.
Awesome. And also joining me tonight, and despite the fact that it is his 15th wedding anniversary this evening, is our VP of Engineering, Dan Pizarski. Dan, welcome. Congratulations to you and your beautiful wife, Lori.
Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate that, Chris.
So let's dive right into it. Janelle, one of the most asked questions, let's get it out of the way. How much does this unit cost?
Well, I always say, encourage you to reach out to one of our partners or your sales rep to get exact pricing. And I will say that as with all of our backpacks and next-gen products, when it was the LU70 upgraded to the LU500, the 500 to the 600, we often just start out where the previous former model was priced at. So I have no doubt this is where we're going to do. And again, there are a lot more features to the LU800, a lot more software and hardware functionality. So again, reach out to your partners and your sales rep to get some exact pricing and availability and all of that fun stuff.
Thanks, Janelle. And of course, it's important to note here that the LU800 is actually in addition to our product line. We're not sunsetting the LU600 like we have previous platforms. The LU800 is a new model that we're adding to our product line. So Janelle, along those lines of some of the input support and video related features within the 800, can you talk about the SDI and how it supports HD and 4K, and whether it supports quad-link 4K and what that looks like?
Yeah, of course. So it is a multi-input device. So you can support each individual input can support up to 1080p HDR if you're using that multi-input functionality. Now, if you want to do 4K, it can support 4x3G SDI or a single 12G 4K input. So depending on what flavor you guys are transmitting in, the only really difference here is if you are doing 4K, it does require an LU4000 4K receiver on the other end.
Awesome. So one of the other questions specifically related to how to support multiple inputs and multiple outputs was what receivers can we use in combination with the LU800? And what does that do to CPU load? Dan, can you elaborate on that?
Absolutely. So you're going to start with the LU2000 quad when you're receiving multiple inputs. And the existing quad server you may already have has the correct CPU, even for HDR, even for 2 inputs, even for 4 inputs. So if you already have a quad server, you're already set there for the multi-input.
And will it work with other single input cards, Dan, or single duo platforms that are currently in the field?
Absolutely. For the single input unit, you'll be able to send that to a single output server. Thanks for clarifying that, Chris. You'll be able to send a single output server to a duo. That's true as well. Once you're using the dual input or the quad input, that's where you need the quad server.
Awesome, thank you. So Janelle, a question for you specifically about frame rates and resolution support. So does the LU800 convert frame rates and resolutions, and what does that look like on the server side of things?
Sure. So while we do not do frame rate conversion, our server does do force output resolution. So like I said, each input on the device can support up to 1080p 60. It can support 480i, 720p, 1080i, really whatever video resolution you're feeding in. And whatever your house standard may be, you can force output the resolution. So there's no frame rate, but there's low-cost options to do frame rate conversion for an external device in your control room.
Awesome. Thank you, Janelle. So one of the most exciting features of the LU800 is arguably all of the multicam production that we can do. And so can you use multiple LU800s, Janelle, in order to be able to do more than just a 4-camera shoot?
Very glad this question was brought up because we've been doing at-home production for a number of years with our individual encoders, our LU600, our LU300 field units, and we use what we call precision timing to backhaul those individual streams to our control room where our server lives. So absolutely, the LU800, I mean, we say unlimited angles, unlimited possibilities for a reason. These can be purposed to stack up to as many LU800s to support as many camera angles as your production requires. It will use our precision timing technology to bring those in as within a 1 or 2 frame synced.
Awesome. And Dan, along those lines, can you talk about the streaming protocol that LiveU uses? Because obviously this is one of the most special components of all of our LiveU platforms.
Absolutely. I'm always excited to talk about LRT. It stands for LiveU Reliable Transport. And just like you said, Chris, we use it on all of the LiveU products, from the Smart, LU Smart on the smartphones, all the way up to the LU800. LRT is our deterministic latency streaming protocol, low latency streaming protocol with a ton of resiliency built in, and of course the most important part, bonding built in. And that's what the LU800 uses as well. That's what Matrix uses between nodes as it's sending video back and forth. That's what all of our previous products used. And that protocol has evolved over the years, but a lot of its core ideas were really set down quite a while ago and have just worked so well over the years that they've remained true throughout the product line.
Awesome. And obviously, if anyone's looking for more information on LRT, we do have a lot of information, including a white paper that's available on our website. Feel free to go to liveu.tv and you can search for LRT and find all about our secret sauce. The next question is something that I'm very excited about, which is the ability to switch cameras. So there's actually 2 different modes of operation in terms of multi-camera production that you can use with the LU800. So let's take a look at that graphic because this explains it very well. So there's a multi-high quality mode where we actually would send all 4 cameras back at low latency and in sync to the studio. They would come out of the server on the other side, and then you would use your control room production switcher in order to be able to change between them. Now we do have another mode of operation here that we call switcher mode. This actually turns the LU800 into its own miniature video switcher. And the way that works is we're sending back 1 high quality path. Meanwhile, we're sending back a lower latency and lower resolution quad split with the 4 previews, and you're able to select which feed you want to come back. And Janelle, can you talk to how switcher mode and multi-high quality mode are going to impact bandwidth consumption? Because this was another question that came in. Do I need tons of bandwidth in order to be able to use multi-camera production?
Of course. So, there's going to be obviously a bigger demand for data plans with this functionality. So while the MultiHQ mode will certainly, put some stressors on your data plan, and we do encourage you guys to increase it because per input, you're probably capping the bit rate about 4 to 10 megabits per second, depending on, what you're looking to do. Now, we really built this second feature and this second function because we knew that this was something that was going to be a concern. So in this mode, you're really able to, temper how much data you're using. Instead of sending 4 high quality signals, you're really sending 1 and then that, that quad proxy view. So it allows you to switch in LiveU Central to get the high quality feed, as you're cutting program, or locally on the unit, as you said. So this will help both on the unit's bandwidth consumption as well as on the server side, because if you can imagine, this unit can stream up to 70 megabits per second, which does take some pressure on the server side needing to take in all of those feeds. So with everybody producing content at home and already pushing the limits on their home internet, this is a good feature, I think. It's going to be used often.
I think only James is going to be using 4 cameras in his room in order to be able to broadcast back.
I hope not.
So, related to remote cameras and whatnot, there's a question here about the number of, the type of inputs that we support. So, is the LU800 only an SDI-based multi-camera solution? The answer is yes. So if you want to use multiple cameras, you do need to use SDI. Now the good news is there's lots of inexpensive converters that are very high quality on the market, including AJA and Blackmagic design. So if you were looking to use a HDMI-based camera, you could very easily convert that to an SDI source and then feed that into one of the LU800 multiple input cards and still be able to leverage the power of multiple camera switching as well as multi-high quality mode back at the studio. So Dan, question for you here. Can you control remote cameras using the LU800?
Absolutely you can. It's a new feature coming in our version 8.5 called IP Pipe. And what it does is create a layer 2 bridge between the unit and your studio. It allows you to use really any low bitrate IP protocol over that bridge. That would include control of PTZ cameras. That would include camera paint functionality for cameras that have IP control over their paint functionalities. It might even include things you've designed yourself, like metadata, telemetry data being sent in real time from a different unit, or even IP intercom, for example, to send over that pipe. Really anything that can go over a layer 2 Ethernet connection can go over this pipe. And that, again, very specifically includes control of your robotic cameras on the far side for as many as you want, using even the hardware controller, not using any sort of specialized, some interface we build or something to try to do better than the camera manufacturers. You're using the actual camera manufacturer's interface and controlling that camera on the far side for complete remote production.
So Janelle, I know Dan mentioned it very quickly, but I wanted to bring you in here because I know you're particularly excited about the IP pipe feature, specifically as it relates to things like intercom.
Yes, so, it's intercom, and it's also, what I hear often from college, especially college athletics, they're looking to stream as many sports as possible, but there's always a limitation of bodies to put on cameras. So with this IP pipe and the ability to do PTZ cameras remotely, this becomes more of a one-man show, bringing a unit to a, softball field, wiring up PTZ cameras and producing everything at home. What it also does is, requiring the ability, really getting the ability to communicate with people who do need to be on site in the camera, with the camera in a field unit, which brings up another big topic I think you're going to go over is our audio assist, allowing you really to have full communications in the unit and even when you're walking away from the unit.
Awesome. Thanks, Janelle. So, continuing along the lines of some of the connectivity features in the unit, a question came up about whether or not the unit can support NDI. Dan, can you speak to that, please?
Absolutely. So this initial launch of the unit has SDI and HDMI inputs. And of course, as we've had for some time now, we have NDI out from the receive server so that you can use that as a replacement for SDI. But the masterminds behind the LU800 knew that the trend in camera technology was towards IP output directly from the camera. So there's a roadmap with the LU800, right with the same units that will begin shipping shortly, just through software changes, probably as we look into 2021 to use IP inputs on the cameras. We've got SMPTE 2110 in our sights, we've got NDI in our sights, we've got some audio codecs like Dante in our sights, and we'll see what the predominant protocols are on the camera side of the shop out there at the time that we go to add those features, and the unit will be able to support those.
So shifting gears a bit, another question that came in yesterday was, does the LU800 support analog audio? Janelle?
So the answer is no, it does not. We decided really for 2 reasons. Real estate is a big factor in building out this LU800. And while, analog audio is commonly used. We really wanted to prioritize certain things so that the unit isn't, gigantic on the backs of a cameraman, right? The other thing is really prioritization of other software features. We really wanted to put in forward thinking technology in this unit, both on the software and hardware level, which I think we really did. And one of those things I'm really happy about is being able to support more embedded audio channels, because now it can really be used for sports production, primary and backhaul transmission services, and even more robust REMI productions, being able to do mix minus remotely. So yeah.
So Janelle, we'll get to the 16 audio channels in 1 second, but you mentioned something important, which is the ergonomics of the unit itself. So we have a new custom designed LiveU backpack for the LU800. Like all of our products, we've got an excellent textile to go along with it. It has a giant sunshade so that you can see the beautiful new touchscreen that's inside of the unit. There is a pocket that's available down the bottom so that you can use this for storage of power adapter, or if you wanted to use an external battery, this fits nicely in here. Even has cabling to come back up and be able to plug into the unit. On the side of the backpack, there are these mesh panels that open up in order to allow you to be able to access all of the connectors on the LU800. So previously our backpacks unzipped at the top in some way. In this case here, because all of the connectors are on the side and the antennas are on the top and bottom, we give you the side panels that you can open up. Just a couple of other little things. The straps are longer. It sits nice and flush to your body. We've got the same remote control that we offered with our LU600 series. And of course the breast strap with this time a whistle. So hopefully that comes in use for somebody. But jumping back to the audio features here, because 16 channels of audio, Janelle, is definitely a big deal. How do you see that sort of changing the way production is being conducted?
Sure. So there's really two different configurations that are going to be out of the box. There's going to be the ability to do 16 embedded audio channels on a single input, or split that up 4 per input. So I really see this as, cameras, most of the cameras, do up to 4 embedded audio channels, but oftentimes, at least with REMI productions and at-home productions, we're doing a little bit of mixing locally, and we're also doing some remotely. We saw this with New England Sports Network for their spring training games. So I think this really increases the functionality of how you guys do your productions, both locally on site and remotely, locally on site and back at home. So as well as support for primary and backup transmission, as I said before.
Thanks, Janelle. So we've talked about both analog audio as well as embedded audio. What about Dante? Dan, can you talk to IP-based audio technologies in the LU800?
Absolutely. As I mentioned in 8.5, the version drop that's coming along with the LU800 in the summer timeframe, we're going to have Dante support as ingress to IFB on the server side, a long asked for feature. So take your Dante system and use that as the source for all of your IFB going out to units, whether they're 800s or any other unit. But again, we wanted to be forward thinking in the 800 and realize that camera technology and in the field audio technology is going to move to IP-based protocols. And so a roadmap exists for the 800 to get to IP-based input, be that Dante, be that 172110 itself with audio streams, be that NDI. And again, we want to see a little bit where the kind of in-the-field camera market shapes up in terms of these IP protocols and what are most widely supported. But that roadmap definitely exists for the 800 as Dante has input as well.
Great, thanks, Dan. We got another question here. If the camera operators are at the end of a long SDI cable, how do the comms work? So today you could obviously extend the comms from the 800 on out, but one of the things that we're actually working on inside of the LiveU Control app is our audio assist feature. So you'd be able to use both IFB or intercom inside of your smartphone so that you could have your camera operators connected up to your LiveU system, as Dan was outlining, either analog audio or Dante-based IFB or intercom coming into the server side, and then you'd be able to select the audio channel that you wanted to on your smartphone. So that's probably the way that I would recommend handling the camera operators if they're at the far end of an SDI cable connected to the 800. Continuing to talk about some of the production features, how does the LU800 handle video return, Janelle, and what's the latency like?
Sure. So much like our current LU600 and the LU610, we have a video return server that you can fix into your control room and allows you to send up to 2 channels to a field unit in the field. So the LU800 is similar. We have the ability to send video return signals to the unit. We actually upgraded the HDMI to a full-size HDMI output so that you can plug into an external monitor. What's great about the video return service that we have today is, while it's single rack mount 2 channels, you can stack that up and send as many as, 20, 30 feeds to your field units out there. So I think this really gives some robust back and forth between the control room and your field team. Along with video return, I think we'll get into it later, but of course, Tally Light comes along with that, Audio Connect, Audio Assist that Chris mentioned. But video return seems to be one of the big ones, so I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, Janelle, and let's talk about Tally Support. So the way Tally Support works with both our 600 and 800 platform is you connect up an external USB GPIO interface into the server. You connect up the GPOs, the general purpose outputs of the Tally from your video switcher into the GPI of the device that's connected to the LU2000 server. And then in the field, we have unfortunately I don't have one today, they're cute. It's about the size of a deck of cards. It's our own proprietary design of a Tally Light. That has extremely low latency. So when somebody pushes that button on the program bus on that video switcher, within about 100 milliseconds, that light in the field goes on. So it's a really great solution that we have available today. And while we're talking about audio assist features, the IFB components within the LU800, we mentioned earlier that there are 2 jacks on the side of the 800. These are 1/8" mini TRRS jacks. They can be used for video return monitoring of audio. They can be used for 2 IFBs. They can be used for 2 intercoms, or they could be used for 1 IFB, 1 intercom, 1 IFB, 1 video return audio. So really you can mix and match whatever you want. But there are 2 audio interfaces that are on the LU800 in order to be able to really get maximum production type flexibility out of the unit in the field. So we got a question here, and actually one of our viewers in the comments section also put this in. In thinking about webcasts and other non-broadcast streams that go straight to the web, if you have 4 cameras, can you run a virtual production switcher instead of having to run everything back to a studio and using a physical production switcher? So Dan, can you talk to this?
Yes, you can. So the 4 independent streams coming from the quad input or dual input or 3 input can be streamed to our cloud software just like they can be streamed to a physical server. And they can be turned around there as RTMP. They can be turned around there as NDI, a technique that we're seeing growing a little bit to use in pure cloud deployments today. They can be turned around there even as transport stream. So you can get the 4 outputs in a pure IP format through all virtualization, through all cloud, and run that right into your cloud workflow. And we've done that with an increasing list of cloud production partners and with customers that are using those platforms to get that job done. There's an important note here about synchronization. So the quad input in the 800, when you're receiving those outputs as SDI in the initial release of the software and hardware, those will be in perfect frame sync with the quad output. However, when we pass that on as RTMP, that timing will be lost in the RTMP protocol as it moves forward. We do have a roadmap to start including time information in each one of those stream formats I just mentioned, NDI, RTMP, transport stream, whatever future protocols we support there, so that the cloud switching platform would then also be able to use that timing information to keep things in sync. That'll follow on a little after the initial release, so that's one important consideration. But ultimately, you'll be able to use 4 or more, as you outlined in terms of using 2 800s together. And once we get to that part of the roadmap, you'll be able to keep those in perfect frame sync.
Awesome. And Dan, a question that actually just came in during this live stream that I'd like you to elaborate on. Do the signals from the LU800 back to the studio go through a server, or do they go through some proprietary cloud system?
So the audio and video signal from any LiveU unit, the 800 or any of the other units in the field, with a handful of exceptions, go directly from the unit to the decode server. They don't pass through our cloud. That's for latency reasons, that's for security reasons, that's for privacy reasons, any number of reasons. there's cases where you might ask us to host cloud receive software and turn that around as RTMP. And in that case, it's going to your specific instance of that software, but we may be hosting it. And then, of course, there's systems like Matrix, where you may be choosing to stream to a LiveU managed cloud, where that's distributing those audio and video signals around. So those are the exceptions I mentioned before. But in all those cases, in any case where you have a receive server, or in some specialized cases where you've got our receive software virtualized, but it's not in our cloud, that's going directly from the unit to that software, and it's not passing through our cloud. Command and control protocol talks to our cloud all the time. That's how you can use LU Central and take control of units and things like that. But that's only the command and control. That's not the audio and video stream.
Thanks, Dan. So one of the things that we talked a lot about yesterday was how the LU800 is future-proof, featuring 5G modems and a 5G custom antenna design. Now, Dan, I know 5G is something very near and dear to your heart. Can you elaborate? Does the 800 only support 5G, or will it support older technologies like 4G and 3G as well?
So it absolutely supports older technologies as well. There's a couple different options for that. I mean, I think the most exciting for me is the idea that the newer 5G modems are auto switching, right? They're LTE and 5G, and they just connect to what's best available at any time. And in fact, little side note, and we can get into this in a future, 5G deep dive that we've kind of discussed, that's sort of a requirement for current 5G networks, because a lot of the 5G networks out there are actually under the hood sort of hybrid networks, where some part of the network, like either uplink or command and control, is actually still done over LTE, and only certain parts of the network are done over 5G. And that's, I mean, one reason why the modems support switching LTE and 5G, but obviously it's a very consumer friendly and nice feature to have on the modems as well. And then when you look at even older technologies like 3G, it can still use those modems. They still fit. We can still use those special antennas, the antenna that's properly designed for that network type in the unit. So if we happen to be in a specific region or a specific use case where that's really what it calls for, we can outfit the unit in that way. And again, these are details we can get into in a future kind of 5G deep dive. But when we look at countries that are heavily deploying 5G, of course, a lot of those carriers are anxious to sunset their older 3G technologies and reclaim those frequency bands to use as part of their 5G networks. So we see this kind of rolling trend around the world of, knock on wood, thank goodness, finally 3G going away, and LTE being the sort of standard, widely deployed standard out there, and 5G being the new emergent standard out there. And I think that's a good thing for all of us.
And certainly things like IoT are going to play a big role in that in the long run too, because more IoT devices means that more reason to deploy a 5G network. So one of the questions that came up yesterday as well is, Dan, is a 5G network a reality in rural or suburban areas, or is this only like a city-based thing?
I think you would be surprised how much sub-6 gigahertz 5G is available in rural areas. I mean, that was one of the specific reasons the carriers chose some of those sub-6 frequencies, and in some cases, very low band sub-6 frequencies like 600 megahertz or 850 megahertz as a way to get very long propagation, very large cells, and a way to reach rural communities. So I think, again, the kind of answer, of course, varies carrier by carrier, country by country, but you'll be quite surprised how much 5G is available in specific countries, even in very rural areas. Now, the other flavor of 5G, millimeter wave, that's the one that don't let that confuse you. That's the one you've heard of, like, oh, it's only in city centers and it's block by block, and the coverage maps now go all the way down to the lamppost level and show you where the antennas are. That's all true, but that's only true for one specific flavor of 5G called millimeter wave. And again, that's a topic we can cover in a future remotely interesting segment.
Awesome. Thank you, Dan. Now, there was a question that came up yesterday, and I saw it just come up in the chat now. Will the LU800 work with the Xtender? Yes, it will. So if you've got an Xtender, be it a rooftop Xtender that's on a vehicle or a tripod-based Xtender, it'll work with either of those platforms, just like any of the other LiveU devices that you might have today. 200, 300, 210, 220, 610, 600 works just fine. Janelle, can you talk a little bit about the differences between the 600 and the 800? Because they're obviously very different platforms, but they're both based on our best-of-breed HEVC technology. What are some of the key differences between them?
Yeah, I mean, there's a handful of really key differences. We could talk all day, but I would say the biggest ones really is most obvious being a multi-input device. That functionality is, it's going to come in 2 flavors, a Pro 2 version and a Pro 4. The next is HDR support, and I think third really is 10-bit HEVC encoding, having the bit rate be up to 70 megabits per second. 16 embedded audio channels. I could go on and on. So like you said, we're not sunsetting the LU600 in any way, but I think this just adds another great product to our portfolio to support brand new use cases that we probably haven't even heard of yet.
Awesome, Janelle, thank you so much. I'm just taking a quick look at the comments here. It looks like most of our questions have been answered today. Dan, Janelle, thank you guys so much. Dan, go celebrate your anniversary.
Thanks, I will.
And Janelle, you have a lovely evening, and we can't wait to see you next week or the week after on the LiveU Sports Show.
Yes, thank you so much for having me, and cheers.
Cheers. So thank you all for joining us tonight for the LU800 after party. This time slot next week will become the LiveU Sports Show again, 8 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time will be the sports show. I will be coming back, and we have some exciting stuff on tap. We're actually heading to Africa to talk with Moon Sport TV about how they were able to produce one tournament spanning 2 countries without ever leaving home. So if you're looking for more information on the LU800 or have other questions, feel free to put them in the chat section. We're happy to go through and answer those. You can also reach out to your LiveU sales representative or your local partner. You can also visit us online at go.liveu.tv/LU800. That's go.liveu.tv/LU800. On behalf of all of us here at LiveU, I'd like to give a special shout out to our tech support today, Luis Munoz, one of our pre-sales engineers. Thanks for helping out in the comments section and Facebook. Really appreciate it. I'm Chris Perry, and I'm going to go have a really good night.